This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City, trying to organize these 30-minute Trump-inflicted news cycles. Let's empty out the White House's rusty martini shaker filled with stale gin and vermouth and see if we have any fresh olives. First, we have the war in Iraq, Trump's Operation Epic Fury, now entering day 6. And despite what you think, the end is near because everyone is running out of ammunition. I'll explain. Trump is going to declare victory, walk away, and turn Iran into a failed state like Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen, so that there's sectarian violence internally, which means the Iranians can't threaten Israeli or American or Saudi interests. Meanwhile, the death toll in Iran is approaching 1,300. According to Al Jazeera, U.S. and Israeli military airstrikes have hit more than 100 civilian sites inside Iran, like schools, hospitals, and apartment complexes. By the time you hear this, an estimated 400,000 people will have been displaced across the Middle East because of Trump's bombing campaign. So you want to talk about border crisis? The border crisis along our southern border? People try to come to America to escape war, famine, political persecution, or climate catastrophe. This is what causes refugees. And no amount of border security or pumping money into ICE is going to stop people from trying to come to America. The reason border crossings right now are at an all-time low here in the United States is because Joe Biden didn't mess things up in Central America. Donald Trump declared it must stop now. Not the slaughter of innocent Iranians. He's talking about the civil war inside Texas's Republican Party over picking a nominee for Senate. The incumbent, Republican Senator John Cornyn, right now is fighting for his political life, going into a runoff this May against MAGA Republican Attorney General Ken Paxton. Neither man got 50% of the vote on Tuesday. Cornyn is running for his 5th term. He's an institutionalist, a Republican, but he's not sufficiently MAGA enough for Trump, even though he did vote to acquit Trump in both impeachments. He has, however, been critical of Trump's 2020 election fraud claims, but his challenger, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, back in 2020, he led the lawsuit challenging the 2020 election results. It got ultimately rejected by the Supreme Court. Tuesday's primary was indecisive for Republicans. Cornyn beat Paxton, but only by about 20,000 votes. Now he's in a runoff. He beat him by 20,000 votes, despite spending $70 million more than Ken Paxton did in what turned out to be one of the most expensive Senate primaries in American history. This has all the makings of a nasty, brutal civil war within the Republican Party between now and May 26, when the runoff election takes place. Senator Cornyn declared Judgment Day is upon the scandal-plagued Ken Paxton, who last year began a messy divorce after his extramarital affairs, and charges of corruption led to his 2023 impeachment in the Texas State Senate. He was acquitted. He's also faced federal and state corruption charges that were pretty much plea bargained away. Paxton, the Attorney General, has grassroots support among Texas Republicans, but he's not seen as a strong enough candidate to take on the winner of the Texas Democratic primary. That would be 36-year-old Texas state legislator James Tallarico, who defeated Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett with nearly 53% of the vote, enough to obviate the need for a primary, runoff. No runoff. He got more than 50%. The pollsters, by the way, got this one right. I told you he was going into this election with a 5-point lead, and they're still doing the count, but it's looking like it's going to be around a 5 to 6% winning margin. Democratic voters in Texas on Tuesday decided to go for the big tent candidate. That's what they're saying. We went for the big tent candidate, and that's a euphemism for we rejected the black woman and went for the white guy who leads with his Christian faith. Right after Kamala Harris lost, some polls showed that former First Lady Michelle Obama was the most popular Democrat, and people began to ask her to run in 2028. Michelle Obama said, "Nope, America isn't ready to elect a woman." Michelle Obama said, quote, "As we saw in the past election, sadly, we ain't ready. That's why I'm like, don't even look at me about running because you all are lying. You're not ready for a woman. You are not, so don't waste my time," unquote. That's former First Lady Michelle Obama, who went on to say, "We got a lot of growing up to do, and there are still, sadly, a lot of men who do not feel like they can be led by a woman, and we just saw it," unquote. South Carolina House Democrat James Clyburn was part of the Democratic leadership for years. He's still influential, instrumental in getting Joe Biden elected in 2020. After Kamala Harris lost, Clyburn said he agreed with Michelle Obama, but added that doesn't mean women should stop running. On Meet the Press last year, Clyburn said, quote, "Michelle Obama is absolutely correct. If you look at the history, we demonstrated that we're not ready to elect a woman." Clyburn was telling that to Kristen Welker, who is the first woman and first black person to host Meet the Press, which is one of the reasons Clyburn then said, "Just because it doesn't seem that we are ready doesn't mean we should stop the pursuit. And in order for that to happen, they have got to run. So I want women to run. I'm going to support them," unquote. Looks like Republicans in Texas would have preferred running against Jasmine Crockett for the obvious reasons that she's a black woman and Texas is lousy with misogynists and racists. Republican Senator John Cornyn, fighting for his political survival, said if she were nominated, if Jasmine Crockett were nominated, it would be a gift. He said Tallarico is more dangerous for Republicans than Jasmine Crockett would be. Meanwhile, the National Republican Senatorial Committee is already attacking Tallarico, calling the former middle school teacher with a master's in divinity a radical socialist. You know, like Jesus. This Senate primary on both sides, Democrat and Republican, was really about who could win. It was light on issues. It was more about electability. Trump won Texas by 14 percentage points in 2024. With Tallarico, Democrats are hoping they can throw Jesus back in the face of Republicans. They're hoping Tallarico, with his master's in divinity, will be able to remind voters there's a gigantic chasm between what Jesus taught and what Texas Republicans are trying to pass off as deeply held Christian beliefs. According to Hotline, Democrats right now don't think they can flip this blue seat, at least Democrats in Washington. There hasn't been a Democrat who won a statewide seat in Texas since 1988. The last Democrat elected statewide was Lloyd Bentsen in 1988. He was also Michael Dukakis's running mate in 1988. They lost the state of Texas to then Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush. The last midterms, as you know, were 4 years ago. That would have been in 2022. And this year, last Tuesday, we saw in Texas 1.5 million more people doing early voting than we saw 4 years ago. Hotline reports 400,000 new voters participated in Tuesday's Democratic primary in Texas for the first time. More importantly, we saw a little more enthusiasm from Texas Democrats than we did Texas Republicans. 2.2 million Republicans voted in Tuesday's primaries, while 2.3 million Democrats voted. That's a 100,000 differential, and Senate elections are won by those margins. This is, they say, the most enthusiastic Texas Democratic Party in 6 years. Tallarico, meanwhile, must spend the next few months healing the rift with Crockett voters. Tallarico was targeting the Latino vote, while his super PAC was accused of using a very dark filter on images of Jasmine Crockett to make her look extra dark in television ads they took out. The Congresswoman called that, quote, straight up racist. Texas House Democrat Colin Allred ran for Senate against Ted Cruz in 2024, and a lot of us thought he was going to win. He didn't. Allred is black, and a rumor began spreading accusing Tallarico of calling Congressman Allred, quote, a mediocre black man. Tallarico denied it, but Allred laid into Tallarico for saying that and went on to endorse Jasmine Crockett. On the day early voting began in Texas, that would be late February, Stephen Colbert had scheduled an interview with Tallarico. After the interview, CBS lawyers told Colbert he wasn't allowed to run the interview based on guidance from the FCC. The Trump FCC is no longer exempting talk shows from equal time requirements. Well, that's the story we were told by Colbert. The interview aired on YouTube, and Tallarico ended up, after that aired, with a $2.5 million donation bump. Jasmine Crockett, however, said after the interview was posted on YouTube that CBS called her and explained that Colbert was told by CBS lawyers that he could go ahead with the interview with James Tallarico. All he needed to do was offer Jasmine Crockett equal time. Jasmine Crockett is saying the FCC did not force Colbert to cancel Tallarico. It was CBS lawyers who said, you can have Tallarico on the show, but you got to give Jasmine Crockett equal time. She said, I did not get a request from the Colbert Show to come on, unquote. But she has been a guest on the show. So what do you think? What do you think really happened? And should talk shows, using what's left of the public airwaves, should they be able to interview one candidate when early voting is just starting, but not offer equal time to the opponent? I mention this because we heard a lot about it. But according to Jasmine Crockett, the FCC didn't pull the interview with Tallarico. CBS lawyers, she says, didn't pull the interview with Tallarico. According to Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, Colbert was told all he had to do was offer Jasmine Crockett equal time, which Jasmine Crockett says Colbert didn't. She didn't have to accept the offer. That's how equal time works. So for those of you not following this battle for the Democratic nomination for Texas, which Tallarico won on Tuesday, Crockett waited until December, the final day she could enter the primary, and that signaled to Congressman Colin Allred not to try to run again for the Democratic nomination, which he secured 2 years earlier but lost to Ted Cruz. Once Jasmine Crockett entered, Colin Allred dropped out. She was clearly outspent. One pro-Tallarico super PAC, according to Hotline, spent $7.7 million going into Tuesday's election. That's one super PAC. The pro-Jasmine Crockett super PACs altogether spent less than $500,000. Is money important? Well, it sure looks like it. Tallarico spent $15.3 million on advertising, while Crockett only had $4.3 million to spend. Immediately after her defeat, Crockett endorsed Tallarico, as did Kamala Harris, who actively campaigned for her. I woke up Wednesday morning and the first email I got was Kamala Harris asking me to donate now to Tallarico. Does Tallarico stand a chance? Let me know in the comments section. This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. Please share this episode. Hit the like button so I remain in your feed and the notification bell. Donald Trump drags Kristi Noem into the gravel pit. Poor Kristi. You know, Harry Truman once said, if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. Too bad Kristi shot it. There's a massive shakeup inside the Department of Homeland Security as Kristi Noem becomes Trump's first cabinet secretary to get fired. And along with her goes Corey Lewandowski, her de facto chief of staff and alleged lover. The Daily Beast reporting that Noem will lose her special Coast Guard housing where she and Corey Lewandowski were shacking up and allegedly making everyone around them miserable. Trump laid waste to Kristi Noem after her 2 disastrous days this week testifying before the House and Senate. 56-year-old Emmanuel Damas became at least the 10th person to die inside an ICE detention facility this year. That's more than one a week. Damas was being held in a Florence, Arizona, for-profit detention center run by CoreCivic. He reportedly died from an untreated tooth infection that spread to the rest of his body. He reportedly complained to CoreCivic about the toothache in mid-February. He was denied access to a dentist, handed an Advil, and pretty much told to be quiet. The toothache eventually turned into pneumonia and then sepsis. Damas was placed on life support and died on March 2nd. The current president and CEO of CoreCivic is the aptly named Patrick D. Swindle. Swindle is the name of the new president of CoreCivic. He assumed the role in January of this year. He previously served as chief operating officer of CoreCivic, where he reportedly earned an annual salary of roughly $3 million. Damon T. Heininger, Swindle's predecessor as CEO of CoreCivic, he left the job on December 31st, 2025. He earned $7,471,923 in total compensation for fiscal year 2024. Wait, I just noticed something. That's the new CEO of CoreCivic, Patrick D. Swindle, on the left, and on the right is the former CEO of CoreCivic, Damon T. Heininger. I notice a pattern. Male pattern baldness, to be exact. Look at them. If they close their eyes, they look like a pair of syphilitic testicles getting out of a hot tub. I guess they decided to run CoreCivic because they figured, what the hell, I'm already ashamed to show my face in public. The Department of Homeland Security, there we go. The Department of Homeland Security is in partial shutdown as Democrats hold up the 2026 funding bill over demands that ICE agents take off their masks, wear body cams, and rely on judicial, not administrative warrants to kick open doors and arrest innocent people. The House of Representatives on Thursday passed a bill that would fund the Department of Homeland Security throughout the rest of fiscal year 2026. It cleared the House with a vote of 221 to 209, but the same bill died in the Senate with only 51 voting for it. The Republicans need 60 votes to overcome a filibuster. This marks the third time the same funding bill died in the Senate. The Department of Homeland Security has been partially shut down since February 13th. Trump announced he would nominate Oklahoma Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin as Noem's replacement. Senator Markwayne Mullin is a plumber who can't stop the leaks coming out of his office. He's also a mixed martial arts fighter who compared Charlie Kirk to Martin Luther King and he has a PhD from the London School of Economics. Which one of those statements isn't true? I made up one of those statements. London School of Economics. Mullin, as I said, is a mixed martial arts fighter. His record is 5-0. He's undefeated. And as I said, he's a plumber, but I doubt he can fix the toilet that is the Department of Homeland Security. Mullin served in the House of Representatives for 10 years before getting elected to the Senate in 2022. He is the only Native American serving in the Senate. He belongs to the Cherokee Nation. A self-described MAGA warrior, Mullin has been called by Trump as a brilliant man. Trump praised him for his MMA fighting background in nominating Mullin on Thursday. Trump added that being a professional MMA fighter gives Mullin the wisdom and courage to advance our America First agenda. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said of the news about Kristi Noem's firing, "Good riddance," unquote. He said switching cabinet secretaries isn't enough. Jeffries said we need a bold transformational policy before he would approve funding a bill for the Department of Homeland Security. The Democratic Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer echoed Jeffries' sentiment. He reacted to news of Noem's firing by saying, quote, "The rot is deep." He called for reining in ICE and changing the entire mission of the agency. Outgoing North Carolina Republican Tom Tillis, who raked Kristi Noem over the coals on Tuesday, calling her a disappointment. Tom Tillis said he's glad to see Senator Mullin, replace Noem. Tillis said, "I can't think of anybody I'd more proudly want to support to come in and clean up her mess." He added another big positive: he likes dogs. During her testimony before the House Judiciary Committee on Tuesday, Kristi Noem took questions from Florida House Democrat Jared Moskowitz, who wore a Justice for Cricket button, referencing Cricket, the family puppy that Kristi Noem, in her memoir 2 years ago, bragged about killing. This is what North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis said on Tuesday to Kristi Noem about her killing Cricket and the goat. Quote, "You decided to kill that dog because you had not invested the appropriate time and training, and then you had the audacity to go into a book and say it's a leadership lesson. At that same lunch hour, you killed a goat." My point is, those are bad decisions made in the heat of the moment, not unlike what happened up in Minneapolis. Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy pretty much sealed Noem's fate on Tuesday when he grilled her on several embarrassing issues. It did not go well for Kristi Noem. And one of the things that Republican Senator John Kennedy questioned her about was her insistence that Renee Good, who was executed by an ICE agent in Minneapolis, and Alex Preddy, who was killed by border agents in Minneapolis, Senator Kennedy, a Republican, wanted to know why she kept calling them domestic terrorists when video of both shootings clearly showed the opposite. Again, Kennedy is a Republican asking these questions. Noem refused to apologize for calling Good and Preddy domestic terrorists. Several senators asked her about this. All Kristi Noem could say is, "I did not call Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist. I said it appeared to be an incident of domestic terrorism." It went on like that. And she said, I was going on information I received from ICE agents on the ground. Well, Lyons, the acting head of ICE, testified 2 weeks ago, nobody told Kristi Noem they were domestic terrorists. We never said they were domestic terrorists. And it was Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana who asked the $220 million question. Now, ProPublica broke this story. It involved Noem and Lewandowski approving a $220 million payment for Kristi Noem to record a series of commercials featuring Noem on horseback in chaps and a cowboy hat in front of Mount Rushmore, urging undocumented immigrants to self-deport. ProPublica broke the story that Noem and Lewandowski awarded no-bid emergency contracts to her friends, Noem's friends. By law, all government contracts must be open for bidding. But because Trump had declared the border to be a national emergency, Noem and Lewandowski said there was no time to bid on Kristi Noem's commercials. They had to hire somebody immediately. We're talking about $220 million, emergency spending so Kristi Noem could record these commercials. This is Tricia McLaughlin, who up until a week ago was the official spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security. Everyone, according to Tricia McLaughlin, was a domestic terrorist. Whenever ICE agents shot a woman or beat somebody up, they were domestic terror. Whoever ICE agents beat up, domestic terrorists. She has since quit Homeland Security to go burn in hell. Well, this is Tricia McLaughlin with her husband. He's a turd named Benjamin Yoho, and he's also the CEO of the something called the Strategy Group. He's a hyphenate. He's the CEO of the Strategy Group and a turd. He's a double threat. According to ProPublica, it was the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Public Affairs that awarded the no-bid $220 million contracts to produce Kristi Noem's emergency commercials urging immigrants to self-deport. The Department of Homeland Security's Office of Public Affairs, up until a week ago, was run by the Department of Homeland Security spokeswoman, Tricia McLaughlin, who was married to this turd, Benjamin Yoho, CEO of the Strategy Group. I don't know what the Strategy Group is. We're going to find out. So here we go. Tricia McLaughlin awarded $143 million to Safe America Media, which is an LLC formed just 11 days before Tricia McLaughlin awarded that company a $143 million contract to produce this commercial. So they were getting, about half of the spending on this commercial, $143 million. They were paid to produce a commercial featuring Kristi Noem on horseback in front of Mount Rushmore urging immigrants to self-deport. $143 million for that. How much makeup does Kristi Noem need? $143 million. They could have carved Trump's face into Mount Rushmore for that kind of money. So, Tricia McLaughlin gives Safe America Media a $143 million no-bid contract, and this 11-day-old Safe America Media immediately hired the Strategy Group as a subcontractor to produce 5 film shoots, 45 video advertisements, and 6 radio commercials for this campaign featuring Kristi Noem on a horse telling immigrants to self-deport. And the Strategy Group is run by this turd, Benjamin Yoho, the husband of Tricia McLaughlin, the official spokeswoman for the Department of Homeland Security, who was also handing out these no-bid contracts. And here's where it gets really interesting. According to public records, Benjamin Yoho's Strategy Group was paid a total of $226,137 to produce those commercials, which means 11-day-old Safe America Media was given $143 million to produce these commercials of Kristi Noem on horseback telling immigrants to self-deport. And of that $143 million, they only paid this turd, Benjamin Yoho, the husband of Tricia McLaughlin, she who's handing out all these emergency no-bid contracts. They only paid him $226,137.17 for something the Department of Homeland Security paid $143 million for. Where did the $143 million minus $226,137.17 end up? Someone is lying. Or this turd, Benjamin Yoho, is a Yahoo, only getting $226,137.17 from a $143 million no-bid contract his wife handed out. That's all Yoho asked for out of that $143 million payment? So he's either stupid or he's lying, and the answer is both. Well, you can imagine House and Senate Democrats kept asking Kristi Noem the $220 million question, which she could not answer. She had no idea who ran Safe America Media, the company, the 11-day-old company that got paid $143 million to give Benjamin Yoho, $226,137.17 to produce those commercials, which you and me, paid $143 million for. Kristi Noem couldn't explain what Safe America Media did with the rest of the money. She couldn't explain who Safe America was. She couldn't explain what they did other than deposit a taxpayer-funded check for $143 million and then cut a $226,137.17 check to Benjamin Yoho. Turd. Despite Kristi Noem saying the Department of Homeland Security will not approve any checks for more than $100,000 unless it first clears Kristi Noem's desk, she had no idea where that $143 million went. She promised to rein in spending, to watch every penny. No check for more than $100,000, she said, will go out the door of Homeland Security until I, Kristi Noem, approve it first. Which is why when the flash floods hit Central Texas last July 4th, it took 3 days for FEMA to approve a helicopter search and rescue team to look for survivors who by then had already drowned because Kristi Noem waited 3 days to approve the expenditures for search and rescue helicopters. But $143 million in no-bid emergency funding goes to Safe America Media to produce emergency commercials of Kristi Noem on horseback urging immigrants to self-deport, and she has no idea who got the check and what they did with the rest of the money, what they did with a little less than $143 million. Well, everything I read, everything I've been told, says Donald Trump knew about this and was asking about it and was furious, especially since we all know, and he knew, these commercials were never about immigration. They were glamour shoots pushing Kristi Noem as the next Republican nominee for president. And they were really produced by Corey Lewandowski, Kristi Noem's alleged lover and de facto chief of staff, who was Donald Trump's very first presidential campaign manager back in March of 2016. But Corey Lewandowski had to step aside after he was caught on tape physically assaulting a female reporter. He ended up getting arrested and charged by Jupiter, Florida police for that. The DA decided not to prosecute. If he were an immigrant, he'd be deported. All you need is to be arrested. Under Kristi Noem, the rule is if you're an immigrant and you have been arrested, that's Lake and Riley Act. If you've been arrested, you're to be deported. So Trump was on the phone with Senator John Kennedy late Tuesday night after John Kennedy grilled Noem on that $220 million. By the way, that is a picture of Trump at a rally with Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy, who strikes this pose whenever he spots a person of color. That's just a knee-jerk reaction to seeing a person of color. That's how Louisiana Senator John Kennedy rolls. He just automatically raises his arms and cries, "My wallet is in my back pocket. Please don't hurt me, person of color." Senator John Kennedy. Reuters reporting that Senator Kennedy spoke to Trump at 9:30 p.m. Tuesday night after Noem's testimony before the Senate committee. And Trump said to Senator John Kennedy, quote, "I never knew anything about that $220 million. Kristi Noem said it was approved by Donald Trump." That's the only true thing she said. She said Donald Trump knew about this expenditure. That's the only time Kristi Noem wasn't lying during her testimony. But Trump swore to Senator John Kennedy, "I didn't know anything about that $220 million. That's a lie. He knew about it." But Kennedy went with it. He told Reuters, quote, "Donald Trump was pissed about that $220 million. He was not a happy cowboy," unquote. I don't know. Trump seems like a happy cowboy in this picture, doesn't he? Let's see. Why is Trump so happy? Oh, because his face is finally on Mount Rushmore, and that's why. That was not worth the Photoshop. Noem was speaking in Nashville, Tennessee, before a group of police officers when Trump took to Truth Social and deported her from his cabinet. He wrote, "The current Secretary Kristi Noem, who has served us well, will be moving on, blah, 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 blah." So the Tom Homan, what's going on here? There we go. Tom Homan, the border czar, is the apparent victor in all this. Trump pitted them against each other. Noem and Homan hated each other. Kristi Noem reportedly screamed at her staff if Tom Homan was getting more television time than she was. Trump wants that. He likes to pit people against each other. And he wanted to see whether Noem's political instincts were worth more than Tom Homan's actual knowledge of border security. Homan is no threat to Donald Trump, just like Stephen Miller is no threat to Donald Trump. And these two have been the chief architects of Trump's border strategy going back to the first Trump administration. They invented the family separation policy. They invented photographing kids in cages. They're like the Lennon and McCartney of cruelty. All you need is hate. All they care about is the cruelty. And that's why Trump loves them. He trusts them because these two are unelectable. They pose zero threat to Donald Trump. Homan hits up the private sector occasionally, takes bags of cash, but he will never step on Trump's toes. The same can't be said for Kristi Noem, who installed Corey Lewandowski as her de facto chief of staff. As I said, Lewandowski was Trump's first presidential campaign manager. He was let go after getting caught on tape physically assaulting a female reporter. Well, the two of them were eyeing a 2028 presidential run for Noem. That's what the $220 million in advertising in front of Mount Rushmore was all about. She traveled with her own makeup artist. Kristi Noem was being managed by Corey Lewandowski to use the Department of Homeland Security as a launch pad for her 2028 presidential race. And Donald Trump succeeded in making Kristi Noem radioactive. He's running for a third term. He succeeded in destroying Kristi Noem's plans for a presidential run. Noem's new job will be special envoy for something called the Shield of the Americas. It's political exile. The job was invented last weekend. I'm not making that up. It was invented last weekend so she could play some fictitious role in Latin American security. This maneuver was reportedly orchestrated by White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, along with Tom Homan. The two of them wanted Noem gone. So they started leaking. Someone in the White House leaked. No one is talking about the most secure border ever, just the shit show that is Noem and Corey. And the leaks just started pouring out before the testimony, during the testimony, after the testimony. The entire White House was deporting Kristi Noem. And that came from Susie Wiles. I'm being told she's the chief of staff, and she authorized these leaks. She wanted Kristi Noem, and especially Corey Lewandowski, out of there. And she'd been lobbying for months to get Corey Lewandowski thrown to the curb. And it's interesting. This is what I've heard, okay? So this is interesting. Susie Wiles was Trump's co-campaign manager along with Chris LaCivita. Now, near the end of the 2024 campaign, Trump, because he loves to make people miserable. If you work for Trump, it's got to be chaos. You can't be secure in your job. So Trump brought Corey Lewandowski back to shake things up. Lewandowski had been banished from the Trump orbit because of a swath of sexual assault and sexual harassment allegations and arrests. But by the end of the 2024 campaign, near the end of the 2024 campaign, Trump wanted Lewandowski back because he knew Lewandowski is an a-hole who would make everyone unhappy, shake things up. And that's exactly what Corey Lewandowski did. And Lewandowski wanted to become campaign manager again. He felt he was entitled. I was your first campaign manager back in 2015, and I got fired in 2016, all because I physically assaulted a female reporter and then sexually harassed, allegedly, and sexually assaulted some other women. One of them happened to be the wife of a donor, a Republican donor, who he's allegedly got drunk in Las Vegas and allegedly kind of sexually assaulted the wife of a big Republican donor. So Yeah. So Lewandowski, not a good guy. Not a good guy. Even by Trump's standards, not a good guy. Lewandowski, in the final, I'd say, 6 weeks of the 2024 presidential campaign, began whispering into Trump's ear, bad-mouthing Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita. And Trump was told by Corey Lewandowski that Chris LaCivita was taking a huge cut off the top of Trump's campaign advertising budget. Now, this is what campaign managers do. They get a piece, a percentage of everything that's spent on campaign advertising. Trump doesn't allow that. And Corey Lewandowski said, no, Chris LaCivita is getting a huge cut off the top. So Trump called Chris LaCivita in and forced him to show me your financials. Prove to me you're not taking a large percentage of the ad buys. Lewandowski was trying to get Chris LaCivita fired and Susie Wiles. Now, Susie Wiles is now the chief of staff, the White House chief of staff. LaCivita wasn't interested in serving in the White House. So Lewandowski was causing so much trouble during the last 6 weeks of the 2024 presidential campaign that Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles went to Trump and said, you got to choose. It's either Corey Lewandowski or us, because we're going to quit. If Corey Lewandowski doesn't disappear, we're quitting. Trump chose them, and he went on to win. And on election night, Lewandowski was at the big party at Mar-a-Lago, and he innocently walks up to Chris LaCivita to congratulate him as if nothing happened, as if I never stabbed you in the back and the front. And Chris LaCivita, who is an Iraqi war vet, Chris LaCivita, who dreamed up the Swiftboat advertising campaign against John Kerry, Chris LaCivita began pounding his index finger into Corey Lewandowski's chest and screamed F you at the top of his lungs, telling Lewandowski, essentially, I'm going to get you. You're in my crosshairs, Lewandowski. Don't come to me now and make nice. I'm going to get you. So, ever since Lewandowski was brought into the Department of Homeland Security by Kristi Noem, this is what I've heard, and this is what I've read, and this is what I've been told. Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, the minute Kristi Noem brought in Corey Lewandowski, Susie Wiles tried to get Lewandowski ousted. From what I've heard, she was the one who launched the internal investigation, went to an inspector general to look into why Lewandowski was allowed to work illegally for the Department of Homeland Security. She was the one who said Lewandowski was hired as a special government employee, which means he can only work 130 days, and then he has to leave the job or turn over his financials. Lewandowski, up until getting fired yesterday, was a special government employee, but he sure as hell worked more than 130 days and never turned over his financials. He was flouting the law, and everyone knows he was sitting behind Kristi Noem's desk approving all the contracts being handed out. So, it is my understanding that when it became apparent that Lewandowski and Noem were allegedly lovers, Susie Wiles was pushing to get them fired, and this is what I've heard. Chris LaCivita said to Susie Wiles that Chris LaCivita hates Corey Lewandowski, but Chris LaCivita is a bad guy, but he's a campaign strategist. And he said, I think it's in our best interests to keep Corey Lewandowski around for a while. Give him some rope. In the Trump administration, people rise to their highest level of corruption. So Chris LaCivita said, if you get rid of Corey Lewandowski, he can redeem himself. Let him commit a few crimes. And that's what's happened. Trump needed Kristi Noem to go away. He didn't care about Corey Lewandowski. Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles wanted to get in even with Corey Lewandowski. Trump just wanted Kristi Noem to go away. And Trump knew he needed to keep her around long enough to expose her as the mental defective and moral deformity that she is. Because she and Corey want to run in 2028 for president, but Trump wants to run in 2028. And that isn't going to happen for Kristi Noem. She ain't running. She's radioactive now. Trump succeeded. He kept her around just long enough to make it impossible for her to go Nikki Haley on him and make a run for 2028. Remember, Nikki Haley was his UN ambassador, and the height of disloyalty in 2024, she ran for president. So Kristi Noem's co-belligerent was Trump's very first campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, who foolishly thought he could turn the Department of Homeland Security into a rival royal court from whence he and Kristi could launch their presidential campaign. The height of disloyalty as far as Donald Trump is concerned. Trump knew Kristi Noem was a disaster. That's why he picked her. He needed a scapegoat. He knew. He's pushing 80. He knew how this was going to play out. He knew. I need a scapegoat for this. So he picked her. But he wanted to make sure voters knew who she was. So he waited for her testimony this week, where she was exposed for what she has always been, an ill-informed, self-delusional, murderous sociopath. This was Donald Trump's Richard III moment, his House of Cards, the original, the BBC House of Cards, not the one with Spacey. I am somewhat in awe of Donald Trump's ability to destroy people, weak people, moral defectives, masterfully. He played Noem masterfully. Now, this is what he did that was brilliant. Trump is very good at playing. He is dumb. That's why he's so good at playing dumb. He was on the phone after Noem's Tuesday testimony and Wednesday, taking calls from congressional Republicans begging him to fire her, which he was already planning to do. But by forcing members of his own party to demand her head on a stick, he turned her radioactive, eliminating her as a threat for 2028. He set her up for Republicans to demand that she goes. Remember, in order to get the nomination, you need Republican lawmakers on your side. And he turned all the Republican lawmakers against Kristi Noem, setting the stage for 2028. Well, what's next? J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio are now in Donald Trump's crosshairs as he pretends to not be running for a third term. You don't want to be J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, or Pete Hegseth. You do not want to be them because they're next. You might remember this picture. It was last June when Trump launched his first successful airstrikes on Iran, eliminating their nuclear weapons program. That's why we had to go back in last Saturday to eliminate it again. He said we've permanently eliminated Iran's nuclear program. That was last June. And now we went back into permanently eliminated again. Well, when he announced those airstrikes back in June, you had Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, and Pete Hegseth right behind him. There were photos of all three of them standing next to Trump, sitting next to Trump in the Situation Room, advising our commander-in-chief who declared victory, even though Iran never gave up its nuclear ambitions. And Rubio, Vance, and maybe even Hegseth have never given up their political ambitions. And Trump doesn't like that. Trump has no policy other than remaining in charge and eliminating his competitors. And because the first wave of attacks on Iran last June could be spun as a success, they weren't, but low information voters had no idea that Iran was refusing to allow in the weapons inspectors after the attacks. It was being spun as a very successful little 12-day war, is that what they called it? And Trump became concerned that his vice president, J.D. Vance, his Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, Marco Rubio, and his Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, were taking credit for my war. This was my war, not yours. And that is why when Trump attacked Venezuela in early January, J.D. Vance, our vice president, who was down in Mar-a-Lago for Trump's New Year's bash, the attacks happened right after New Year's. J.D. Vance was nowhere to be found inside Trump's makeshift Mar-a-Lago Situation Room. See, that's Mar-a-Lago. We're launching strikes on Venezuela. That's Pete Hegseth on the computer, leaking the information to Jeffrey Goldberg from Atlantic Magazine. That's the Situation Room in Mar-a-Lago. Why? Trump didn't want J.D. Vance, his vice president, getting any credit for this military success because just a few weeks earlier, Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk's widow, at the big Turning Point event, she anointed Vance as Trump's 2028 successor. And she promised Turning Point will be spending tens of millions of dollars building up a get-out-the-vote infrastructure in Iowa for J.D. Vance so he can get the nomination. Got to remember, Turning Point, right after Elon Musk, was the most important factor in getting out the 2024 vote and raising money for Donald Trump. So, Vance was being punished for his presidential ambitions. What happened? You're not supposed to run for president. I chose you as my running mate because you're unelectable. That's why J.D. Vance was picked. He's a disgusting pig. That's why Trump picked him. Don Jr. and Tucker Carlson, speaking of disgusting pigs, they lobbied hard for J.D. Vance to be Trump's running mate. Now, this is not wild speculation. This is fact. It was even reported in the New York Times. This is a fact. Don Jr., before Vance got picked as vice president, said on his show, and I saw this. I used to watch Don Jr.'s show. Don Jr. said when Daddy was searching for a vice president, he said, Daddy needs to pick someone as a running mate who is even more abhorrent to the deep, dark state than my father is. That's what Don Jr. said. He said, picking someone like Rubio or Nikki Haley as vice president will appease the neocons, the Bush wing of the Republican Party, who hate MAGA. And once Trump gets elected, that wing of the party will eliminate Trump by any means necessary through impeachment or worse, to see to it that a traditional Republican is back in the Oval Office. So I'm going to be delicate here, and I'm quoting other people. Don Jr. and then Tucker Carlson told Trump to pick J.D. Vance because he is assassination insurance. Those are not my words. Those are the words of Don Jr. and Tucker Carlson. They said, pick J.D. Vance, he's assassination insurance. You won't get assassinated by the neocons, the Bush wing, the establishment Republicans. So I'm not going to play you Don Jr. talking about this on his show. But if you're interested, look up the New York Times article from July 16th, what the hell is going on with Trump there? Jesus. So go online and read the New York Times article from July 16th, 2024, where the New York Times reported on a phone call between Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson. That phone call took place in June of last year. The New York Times reported on it on July 16th, 2024. During that call, Tucker Carlson said to Trump, if you pick a running mate the Republican establishment wants, someone like Doug Burgum or Marco Rubio, then they will remove you in order to put their guy in the Oval Office. And you know what remove you means. You can also read Vanity Fair and Axios. They've reported on this. They say Axios reported that Elon Musk and his venture capitalist friend David Sachs, also from South Africa, both of them lobbied for J.D. Vance because they love Vance since he's a Silicon Valley tool. But they also sold J.D. Vance as assassination insurance. The deep, dark state would find J.D. Vance even worse than Donald Trump. By the way, J.D. Vance was against the Yemen bombing campaign. He had to be pushed into it. He's a MAGA Republican who's against foreign intervention. So he's betraying Donald Trump. He's eyeing the Oval Office. That's why he was kept out of the Situation Room for the attack on Venezuela. Can't have him look presidential. And he was nowhere to be found when Trump began attacking Iran again early Saturday morning. Instead, Vance was relegated to the White House Situation Room with the seal of the vice president behind him, looking impotent, just as Trump intended. I mean, that is pretty pathetic who he's surrounded by. There's Tulsi Gabbard and Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, and they're just sitting there. And that photo was released to make J.D. Vance look ridiculous. And a man like J.D. Vance cannot give up on The Godfather already. All right, David, just stop quoting The Godfather. So, also missing from the Situation Room this time was Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Now, you might think this isn't important, but this is everything. This is everything. These are the official White House photographs from early Saturday morning when the Iran bombing campaign began. No Hegseth, No defense chief in the Mar-a-Lago Situation Room. No J.D. Vance. Hegseth at least got to be in the Situation Room for Venezuela. Vance wasn't allowed. This time, neither one allowed in the makeshift Situation Room. Why? Well, there are many reasons, okay? The first is the optics. You want to marginalize the two men to make it look like Donald Trump is waging his war all by himself. And so Vance isn't allowed to look presidential, and Hegseth's wings are clipped, just in case Hegseth has political ambitions, or more likely, will just take credit for the military success that Donald Trump anticipates. Also, Hegseth and J.D. Vance are military veterans. That's a detriment when Trump goes to war, because they are reminders that Donald Trump is a coward, a draft dodger. He was a draft dodger during Vietnam. Hegseth served in Afghanistan and Iraq and was awarded 2 bronze medals. J.D. Vance enlisted, joined the Marines to fight in Iraq, where he served in the Green Zone as a military public relations officer. But he was a Marine. He openly admits, to his credit, that he didn't see any battle. But he enlisted, and he wore the uniform. So who's allowed in there with Trump as he's fighting his war now? Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, who, just like Trump, never served in the military. So he can be front and center in the war room. Trump has no problem right now with Marco Rubio, because he's not a reminder that Donald Trump was a coward, a draft-dodging coward during the Vietnam War. He was for the war, just not for him fighting it. So he's not threatened by Rubio's non-existent war record. With Vance and Hegseth, he feels less than while going to war, because they know more than he does. Well, everybody knows more than Donald Trump does. Rubio does, in fact, have presidential ambitions. He ran, remember? He ran in 2016, and he was pretty good going up against Donald Trump. He was. And he's a threat to Donald Trump. He was the most formidable opponent for the Republican nomination in 2016. Rubio, and I've said this, I have zero respect for him, but he is facile. He's quick. He's got a sharp mind. And right now he's insisting that J.D. Vance is the likely nominee in 2028. That's what he said. And he said, I'm not running. But Trump knows J.D. Vance is unelectable. He also knows Rubio is the favorite among what's left of traditional conservative Republicans, right? So Rubio couldn't be vice president because they'd get rid of Trump by any means necessary, right? So how do you eliminate Marco Rubio as a threat? Because J.D. Vance is unelectable, I think, right? Wouldn't you agree that it would be a dream if he got the Republican nomination? Rubio, Rubio could be a formidable opponent if he got the Republican nomination. And Trump needs to destroy him because Trump is running again. So what is he doing? Trump took a neocon like Marco Rubio, an establishment Republican, and for the past year, Trump has been rubbing his MAGA dung all over Marco Rubio to eliminate Marco Rubio as a possible threat in 2028. Trump is covering Rubio in MAGA excrement. All the wars overseas that he promised he wouldn't do, that's on Rubio's bloodstained hands as well. Not to mention cutting all the foreign aid. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying because of Marco Rubio cutting foreign aid. He's our Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. If he makes a run for president, he will have a paper trail that will be leaked assiduously by the Trump people, and he'll be out before he even gets to Iowa. So, with Kristi Noem gone, she's radioactive, Trump is succeeding with his plan to eliminate any 2028 contenders other than himself. Hegseth, Vance, Rubio, and of course Noem, they're going to be out of the picture before the midterms. They're all going to be damaged goods because anybody who comes into contact with Trump is damaged goods, and then they come into contact with Trump and the world discovers that they're damaged goods. Come November after the midterms, at least this is Trump's plan. Come November after the midterms, Republicans will be clamoring, begging him to run for a third term. Who's out there other than Trump? He's purged the party. There's nobody who would dare run against him. They will pay a price. Let's see what happens to J.D. Vance for his disloyalty. Vance is running. He's going to pay a price. Meanwhile, the Justice Department has reposted FBI memos written about the 4 interviews they conducted with an Epstein victim who claims she was sexually assaulted at the age of 14 by Donald Trump. I said reposted. Those memos were reposted. They were first uploaded along with the Epstein files and then removed. Now they're back up. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has volunteered to testify under oath before the Epstein Committee. He will explain, he says, why he told several different stories about his relationship with the pedophile billionaire. That would be Jeffrey Epstein, the pedophile billionaire, not the alleged pedophile billionaire who nominated Howard Lutnick to be Secretary of Commerce, allegedly. Pedophile billionaire, allegedly Donald Trump. I'm pretty sure about one of those descriptive words. The other one I don't think is true. Pedophile billionaire in describing Donald Trump, allegedly. I think one of those words, billionaire. So Lutnick claim allegedly. I mean, it's in the Epstein files. There's evidence. There isn't proof, but there's evidence against Donald Trump. There's no proof. You have to investigate. There has to be a trial. But there is certainly evidence accusing Donald Trump of crimes that Jeffrey Epstein committed. Now, Howard Lutnick claims to have visited Epstein Island. He said once, and he said, I was with my wife and kids. They never lost sight of me. It was an hour and we were gone. Well, this picture popped up in the Epstein files, and that seems to be a man looking a lot like Howard Lutnick walking behind Jeffrey Epstein on Epstein's Island. I see Epstein surrounded by several men. I don't see Howard Lutnick's wife and kids. If this is, in fact, Howard Lutnick, it suggests he spent more than an hour on the island and was not with his wife and kids and nanny throughout the entire visit. He's going to testify. Goldman Sachs' top lawyer, Catherine Rumler, who just resigned, has agreed to testify about her Epstein connections. Rumler served in the Obama administration, and she was being considered for Attorney General, but she wrote a letter asking not to be nominated, and Jeffrey Epstein helped her draft that letter. Apollo Global Management co-founder Leon Black has also agreed to testify. Black reportedly paid Epstein close to $160 million from 2012 to 2017 for estate planning. Black was forced to step away from Apollo Global Management in 2021 because of his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Well, Leon Black is supposedly supposed to be a brilliant investor. Why did he need to pay Jeffrey Epstein close to $160 million for estate planning? The Epstein Committee has also subpoenaed Attorney General Pam Bondi to testify on her handling or mishandling of the Epstein files. This story isn't going away, no matter how hard Trump tries to make it go away. Lindsay Halligan, Trump's personal lawyer, who briefly served as U.S. Attorney for Virginia and failed to secure indictments of former FBI Director James Comey and New York State Attorney General Letitia James, is now the subject of an ethics probe by the Florida Bar Association. They have a bar association in Florida? I mean, lawyers have to pass the bar in Florida? Really? This investigation is I thought anybody gets to be a lawyer in Florida. The investigation is the result of a complaint filed by Campaign for Accountability, their illegal watchdog group, and they're accusing Lindsay Halligan, who has no background as a prosecutor. She's an insurance lawyer. They accuse her of violating the Code of Ethics by misrepresenting the facts when she brought forth charges against Jim Comey and Letitia James. Also down in Florida, the Florida College Republicans at Florida International University are accused of creating an online community of racists who celebrate the Nazis, mock Jews and black people, mocking women and the LGBTQ community, while at the same time advocating violence. According to the Miami Herald, they broke this story. The Miami Herald also broke the Epstein story. According to the Miami Herald, the N-word was found in their group chat 400 times. The Miami Herald reporting this group chat was set up by Abel Alexander Kavarjal. He is secretary of the Miami-Dade County Republican Executive Committee and a law student. He intended to set this group chat up so conservative students could discuss events and promote Republican activities on the campus of Florida International University. And instead, it turned into a hate group. Well, it already was a hate group. So this is an ongoing problem we're seeing with young Republicans, the ones who have been cleaved from the thigh of Donald Trump. I mean, these are young Republicans. All they know is Donald Trump. And these guys, these young Republicans, they are big fans of self-proclaimed Nazi, not neo-Nazi, Nazi Nick Fuentes. As I keep telling you, the most popular podcast among young male Republican staffers on Capitol Hill, Nick Fuentes. They have a serious problem with young Republicans. We saw that with the young Republican group in New York, Kansas, Washington, D.C. They are openly celebratory of Hitler. They use the N-word. I mean, not ironically, not for shock. They are Trump's political children. Speaker Mike Johnson has called on embattled Republican House Democrat Tony Gonzalez to drop out of his reelection race. Gonzalez on Tuesday in the Texas primary, he's a Texas congressman from Uvalde, he failed to get 50% of the vote. He goes into a runoff again against Brandon Herrera, who lost to Gonzalez in a runoff 2 years ago by about 400 votes. Herrera has 4 million followers on YouTube. He, like a young Republican, has been accused of trivializing the Holocaust, Hitler, and since he's pro-gun, he has made fun of veterans who used guns to commit suicide. If Gonzalez drops out of this race, Herrera, who calls himself the AK guy because of his love for guns, he would most definitely, it's a deep red district, he would most definitely become the next congressman from a district in Texas that represents Uvalde, where 19 children and 2 teachers were massacred in 2022 by a lone gunman using an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle. Mike Johnson is setting the stage for this guy Herrera to become the next Republican congressman from that district. Mike Johnson issued a statement saying leadership has asked Congressman Gonzalez to withdraw from his race for re-election. It's because Gonzalez was involved with a staffer who ended up committing suicide, and apparently he sent inappropriate texts to her. The House of Representatives voted no on a war resolution to end Donald Trump's illegal attacks on Iran. Speaker Mike Johnson says the war powers resolution was unnecessary because this is not a war. He said the last thing our commander-in-chief needs during not wartime is a Congress that kneecaps him when he's waging not war. The Senate took up a war powers resolution introduced by Kentucky Republican Senator Ron Paul, who is opposing these attacks on Iran, and it was co-sponsored by Virginia Democrat Senator Tim Kaine. It went down to defeat on Wednesday, 47-53. The only Republican who voted in favor was Ron Paul, who co-authored the resolution. The only Democrat voting against it was Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, who is not doing well. He's not well. New polling shows only 1 in 4 Americans support Trump's attacks on Iran. Another poll shows only 16% of Americans support sending ground troops into Iran. For the first time since the attacks began, Trump has tried to clarify what his end game is. He's given about 20 interviews, and what we can ascertain is he wants to destroy Iran's missile capabilities, destroy the Navy, destroy Iran's air defenses, destroy their nuclear weapons program, and stop it from arming regional actors who are fighting proxy wars in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen. That seems to be, if you listen to his interviews, that seems to be what this is about. At least this hour, that's what it's about. Despite key attacks on the Iranian Navy, the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil must pass, is now closed. That's why the average price of gasoline is now $3.20 a gallon. It jumped 22 cents a gallon in 1 week. Some are saying we should expect the cost of gasoline to increase by another 30 cents a gallon in the next 2 weeks. Economists warn the global supply chain, not just oil, but the entire global supply chain has been interrupted by Trump's illegal attacks on Iran. Airspace over the Middle East is pretty much shut down, and that airspace makes up 13% of all global air cargo. So if air cargo can't fly, and that means there are supply chain disruptions, and that means inflation. Remember COVID? Remember that? The stock market, since the attack, has erased much of its gain for the year. But you know who's doing well? Defense companies. They are skyrocketing because Israel, Persian Gulf states, and America, they're running out of munitions. There were reports in the Washington Post that Persian Gulf nations are telling the Pentagon they are all out of defensive weapons, which are very expensive. And Iran is fighting an asymmetrical war. Iran is firing suicide drones, which cost about $20,000, $30,000 to make. And the United States, Israel, and Persian Gulf allies are shooting these drones out of the sky, often with missiles that cost like $1 million each. It's asymmetrical. Pete Hegseth, the white Christian nationalist Secretary of Defense, told reporters Thursday the United States has enough weapons to continue the war as long as Trump wants. He said, what did he say? Iran is hoping that we cannot sustain this, which is a really bad miscalculation. Our munitions are full up and our will is ironclad, which means our timeline is ours to control. That sounds good, right? It sounds good. It's like, John Wayne talk. That's how you get people killed, talking like that. The Pentagon claims U.S. and Israeli airstrikes have eliminated 86% of Iran's ballistic missiles, as well as 73% of their drones. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer at first refused to allow the United States to use British air bases to launch attacks on Iran. He said he's concerned that America has not explained what the end game is. He told Parliament this week regime change can't be accomplished without boots on the ground. And with 12% of Americans saying they support boots on the ground, I don't see how Trump is going to do this. I've been telling listeners for years, wars are not won from above. You can destroy things. You can destroy things, but you can't win a war just by bombing. You have to go in there. We are seeing naval battles not witnessed since World War II. This as Iran fired missiles on Turkey, forcing NATO to knock it out of the sky. So NATO is not involved, but I think it's Article 5 of the NATO treaty. An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us, and Iran launched a missile into Turkey. NATO knocked it out of the sky. NATO Secretary General warned that Iran is now becoming a direct threat to the rest of Europe because it just attacked Turkey. Turkey is a NATO nation, and an attack on one is an attack on all. The NATO Secretary General said he was pleased that NATO air defenses were able to knock the Iranian missile out of the sky before it did any damage in Turkey. Trump saying, we won't stop until the Iranian Air Force, its air defenses, and its entire Navy are completely destroyed. He said, I'm calling for total demolition. Sounds good, doesn't it? Makes me feel strong to hear a president lie to me that way. At the time of this show, the humanitarian death toll inside Iran is estimated to be 1,230. The Pentagon confirmed it's on the brink of sinking the entire Iranian Navy. Well, why is the Strait of Hormuz closed? The Soleimani, an Iranian submarine, was destroyed by an American submarine in the Indian Ocean. This marks the first time an American submarine in combat destroyed another submarine since World War II. The Soleimani was named after Qasem Soleimani, Iran's most beloved general, who Trump assassinated in January of 2020. Hegseth celebrated after the submarine was destroyed. He said, Trump got Soleimani twice, I guess, unquote. Good. Nice. 87 Iranian sailors were killed in international waters off the coast of Sri Lanka after a U.S. submarine torpedoed the Iris Dena, an Iranian warship. The Pentagon says U.S. drones took out an Iranian drone carrier said to be the size of a World War II-era aircraft carrier. The Trump administration is reaching out to Kurds in Western Iran. They're in Western Iran, right? Please leave a comment if I'm getting this wrong. It's Western. Yeah, I think they're in Western. Yeah. The Trump administration is reaching out to Kurds in Western Iran and in Iraq, urging them to join the United States and Israel in their fight against Iran. Trump has reportedly signaled to Kurdish leaders they have to choose. Pick a side, said Trump. You're either with America and Israel or you're with Iran. So in anticipation of a ground invasion by Iraqi Kurds, Iran launched missile and drone attacks inside Iraq's Kurdish region. Shanaz Ibrahim Ahmed is the wife of Iraqi President Abdul Latif Rashid. She is from a prominent Kurdish family in Iraq, and she lashed out at the Trump administration for trying to recruit Kurdish fighters in the war in Iran. She said, Kurds are not mercenaries. We're not guns for hire. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi complained that every time Iran tries to negotiate with Trump, the talks stop and America attacks. The president of Azerbaijan, which neighbors Iran, is demanding an apology after Iranian drones struck his country. Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, who took office, I believe, in 2024, right? Israel and the United States failed to eliminate him. They've been bombing the presidential palace. He warned he is duty-bound to keep Iran intact and will fight any separatist activity. Ali Larijani, he is secretary of the Supreme National Security Council for Iran. He said that Iranian forces are, quote, waiting for a U.S. ground invasion. He promises Iranian troops will disgrace U.S. officials by capturing and killing thousands of Americans. He warned the land of Iran is no place for the servants of hell. With the killing of the Ayatollah Khamenei, there's talk that his son, Mojtaba, could be the heir apparent, but Trump told reporters, it's up to me who becomes the new Ayatollah, and that he wants to be consulted in picking the new leader. Trump said, I have to be involved. He called Khamenei's son, quote, a lightweight who won't bring peace and harmony to Iran the way Trump has. Trump is reliant on a State Department that has cut thousands of jobs. It's threadbare. The United States has yet to confirm ambassadors to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Lebanon, Jordan, and Qatar, but Trump says, I don't need ambassadors. I'm smart. And I got Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. Not only that, you got Pete Hegseth saying of the Iranians, they are toast, and they know it. Yeah. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for listening. Please share this episode. Write to your members of Congress. Call your members of Congress. Register to vote. Do all the things you know you should be doing, and do a kind thing for somebody who needs kindness. Which I shouldn't have to tell. You all know that. Okay, do me a favor. Hit the like button. Hit the notification bell, because my schedule is irregular. I have to fact check everything. I do this all by myself. Everything I do by myself. So if I got anything wrong, leave a comment. I read all your comments. I mispronounce words. I know that. If you want to correct my pronunciation, go ahead. But I'm more concerned about if I got any, like, I believe the Kurds are in northwestern Iran. I believe. So leave a comment if I get anything wrong. It's a lot of information to process. And I will be damned if Donald Trump, a merchant of chaos, will confuse me. I am staying on top of this. He's not going to win. Okay, be well. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room.